Something broke last night. And I do not mean the market, I mean the actual physical infrastructure that delivers real silver to real buyers in the real world. 3 separate systems, 3 separate continents, all cracking at the same time. And the price on your screen is still lying to you about all of it. I have been watching this market for years. I have seen corrections, I have seen squeezes, I have seen manufactured sell-offs designed to shake weak hands out of their positions before a move higher. But what I am looking at right now is different. What I am looking at right now is a simultaneous collapse of the 3 pillars that hold the global silver supply chain together. And when all 3 break at the same time, the word shortage does not cover it anymore. We are talking about a structural repricing event. We are talking about the paper price getting violently disconnected from physical reality in a way that this market has never seen before. So let us get into it. Because you need to understand every layer of this. Start in Mexico. Because right now, 202.6 million ounces of annual silver production is functionally offline. Not slowing down, not disrupted, offline. And the reason is a narco war that nobody in the mainstream financial press wants to connect to the silver market, even though the connection is direct, documented, and devastating. Here is what happened. Mexican federal forces carried out an operation against Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, the leader of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, known as CJNG, known by his alias El Mencho, one of the most wanted men on earth. $10 million American bounty on his head, and when that operation removed him from the equation, it triggered exactly what intelligence analysts had warned would happen if CJNG's leadership structure was ever disrupted. A power vacuum. And in Mexican cartel geography, a power vacuum does not produce peace, it produces war. Every regional commander, every lieutenant, every territorial operator that was kept in line by the fear of El Mencho is now fighting for control. And the territory they are fighting over runs directly through the heart of global silver production. Zacatecas, Jalisco, Chihuahua, Sonora. These are not peripheral regions. These are the core. Zacatecas alone accounts for approximately 35% of Mexico's total silver output. And right now the highways through those states are contested. Truck drivers are not moving. Mining convoys are not running. Because when cartels go to war, the first thing they control is the roads. Nothing moves without their permission. Mexico produces approximately 25% of the world's total new silver supply every year. The Silver Institute puts Mexican production at roughly 200 to 206 million ounces annually. That is the number sitting behind a wall of violence right now. And when you understand that global silver mine supply only totals around 820 to 850 million ounces per year against demand that already exceeds 1 billion ounces, the removal of even half of Mexico's output from the accessible supply chain is not a disruption, it is a catastrophe, and the paper price has not moved to reflect it. Now let us move to New York. Because while Mexico is burning, the COMEX is quietly running out of metal. The registered silver inventory at COMEX, which is the silver formally designated as available for delivery against futures contracts, the metal that is supposed to back the paper claims, has collapsed 75% since 2020. In 2020, the registered inventory sat at approximately 370 to 380 million ounces. Today, we are below 90 million ounces. That is a loss of 285 million ounces in 5 years. Silver that has been physically pulled out of the exchange warehouses by buyers who wanted the real metal instead of a paper promise. Here is where the math gets terrifying. The total open interest on COMEX silver contracts right now sits at approximately 230 million ounces. That is the total notional silver represented by all outstanding futures contracts. And we have less than 90 million ounces of registered silver to back those claims. 4 paper claims for every physical ounce in the vault. 4. This is rehypothecation. This is fractional reserve applied to a commodity. It works as long as nobody asks for delivery. The moment they do, the illusion breaks. And here is the rumor that is quietly terrifying trading desks right now. A major Chinese industrial conglomerate, an entity with direct ties to Beijing's Strategic Resource Acquisition Program, submitted a demand for physical delivery of 30 million ounces through the COMEX. 30 million ounces. And the story going around is that the COMEX denied or delayed the order. I cannot verify every detail of this rumor. What I can tell you is that the arithmetic makes it entirely credible. If you have 90 million ounces of registered inventory and one buyer demands 30 million ounces, that is 1/3 of everything in the vault walking out the door in a single transaction. The remaining 60 million ounces against 200 million ounces of remaining paper claims would put the ratio above 3 to 1. And the market would immediately understand that the vault is nearly empty relative to the obligations against it. A fractional reserve system can sustain itself indefinitely as long as confidence holds. The moment the gap between the paper claim and the physical reality becomes visible, the rush to convert paper into metal accelerates and the system breaks. This is not theory. This is the documented history of every fractional reserve structure that has ever failed. The London Gold Pool, the 1960s. A coordinated effort by the United States and Western European central banks to hold the gold price at $35 an ounce, while dollar creation was making that price a mathematical fiction. They dumped thousands of tons of gold. They defended that price for years. In March 1968, it collapsed. The demand for physical gold overwhelmed the mechanism of suppression, and the price repriced to reality. 1,971. Nixon did not close the gold window because he wanted monetary freedom. He closed it because France and other foreign governments were showing up at the Treasury demanding gold in exchange for their dollar reserves, which was their legal right under Bretton Woods. The United States had created more dollars than it had gold to back. When the redemption demands exceeded the available supply, the game ended. Paper had exceeded physical reality and the system broke. Gold went from $35 an ounce in 1971 to $850 an ounce by 1980, 24 times in less than a decade. That is what happens when suppression breaks and genuine price discovery occurs. The price does not just close the current gap. It covers all the years of artificial suppression that allowed demand to build up at the wrong price signals. Now let us move to Beijing, because China has just done something that should be front-page news in every financial publication on Earth, and it is being almost completely ignored in the Western press. On January 1st of 2026, China implemented what I am calling the silver shadow ban. The official government directive restricts the export of refined silver from China to only 44 specifically approved state-controlled entities, 44 companies. In one of the world's largest silver refining and processing centers, overnight, from a relatively open export market to a tightly controlled list of 44 vetted state operators. Why does this matter? Because China is not just a silver producer. China is a massive processor and refiner of silver that is mined elsewhere. Silver ore and concentrate flows into China from across the world, gets refined into the high-purity forms required by industrial buyers, and then gets exported to global markets, or at least it used to. As of January 1st, 2026, that flow has been reduced to a controlled trickle directed primarily toward Chinese domestic industry. Western solar manufacturers, electronics companies, EV battery suppliers, all of them who were counting on Chinese refined silver to meet their 2026 procurement targets are now staring at a supply gap they cannot easily fill from other sources. The Silver Institute had estimated that Chinese exports were contributing somewhere between 40 and 50% of the refined silver available to Western industrial buyers. That pipeline is now operating under Beijing's strategic priorities, not market demand. And Beijing's strategic priorities are very clear: solar panel production, electric vehicle supply chains, artificial intelligence, data center, infrastructure, military technology. All of these Chinese industries get first access to refined silver. The rest of the world competes for whatever is left. This is not an accident. This is deliberate. China watched how the United States and Europe used semiconductor export controls to try to constrain Chinese tech development. And they looked at their own resource base and asked what strategic materials they could nationalize that would give them leverage. Silver answered that question. Silver is the enabling material for the green transition and the AI transition simultaneously. Whoever controls the silver controls the pace of both. Now, I need you to understand why this matters so much on the demand side, because the demand story is what transforms this from a significant disruption into an existential repricing event. The solar industry requires approximately 20 milligrams of silver per watt of generating capacity in standard crystalline silicon panels. The International Energy Agency projects that global solar deployment needs to roughly triple between now and 2030 to meet climate commitments. That projection translates into a massive, sustained, growing demand for silver from the solar sector alone. The Silver Institute puts 2025 solar silver demand at approximately 130 million ounces per year. 130 million ounces, just from solar. And that number grows every year as more capacity gets deployed. Electric vehicles. Each EV requires silver in its electrical systems, battery management, charging contacts, and circuit boards, between 1 and 2 ounces per vehicle on average. Global EV production in 2025 was approximately 14 to 15 million units and is scaling higher. Another 15 to 30 million ounces of annual demand just from EVs, also growing. And then there is artificial intelligence. This is the factor that most silver analysts have not yet fully priced into their models, and it is a massive oversight. AI data centers are among the most silver-intensive industrial facilities ever constructed. Silver is used in the thermal management systems, in the connective circuitry, in the high-frequency electrical contacts that allow GPU clusters to operate at the performance levels that AI training and inference require. A single, large-scale AI data center can require hundreds of thousands of ounces of silver in its infrastructure. And the global AI data center build-out is the fastest-growing industrial capital expenditure in human history right now. Every major tech company, every government, every military organization on Earth is racing to build AI compute capacity, and every single data center in that build-out requires silver. Here is the critical word: inelastic. These industries do not reduce their silver purchases when the price rises. A solar panel manufacturer does not have a substitute. There is no material on Earth that conducts electricity as efficiently as silver at the operating temperatures and scales that photovoltaic cells require. An AI data center operator cannot swap out silver for copper in their thermal management systems when they are running GPU clusters at full load. A military contractor building precision electronics cannot use an inferior conductor in contact points that need to cycle billions of times without failure. These buyers will purchase silver at $30 an ounce. They will purchase it at $60, at $90, at $120. Because the alternative is not building the product their entire operation depends on. The demand does not flex with price. Now bring all three forces together, because this is where the picture becomes undeniable. Force 1. Mexico. The world's largest silver-producing nation is experiencing a narco war in its core mining states. 202 million ounces of annual production is at risk, 25% of global annual supply, potentially frozen behind cartel checkpoints. Force 2. COMEX. Registered vault inventory has collapsed 75% since 2020. There are 4 paper claims for every physical ounce. A major Chinese buyer has allegedly attempted delivery of 30 million ounces and been blocked. The fractional reserve structure is being stress tested in real time. Force 3. China. The shadow ban on refined silver exports, effective January 1, 2026, is removing 40 to 50% of the refined silver that Western industrial buyers had been sourcing from Chinese refineries. Beijing has decided this metal is too strategic to export. 3 simultaneous forces. Each one, taken alone, would be a historic event. Together, they constitute the supply side of a perfect storm against inelastic industrial demand that is growing faster than at any point in history. Let me do the math. The Silver Institute documented back-to-back supply deficits of 200 to 250 million ounces per year before any of this happened. Use 200 million as the baseline. If the Mexico disruption removes even half of that 202 million ounce annual production for 6 months, that adds another 50 million ounces to the deficit. If the China shadow ban removes 40% of the Western refined silver import supply, that is another 80 to 100 million ounces. You are now looking at a total annual supply gap approaching 330 to 350 million ounces, against demand that will not decrease because the price is rising. Total identifiable above-ground silver stocks, including ETF holdings, exchange vaults, and industry inventories, sits at roughly 1.2 to 1.5 billion ounces. If you are drawing down those stocks by 330 million ounces per year, you have less than 5 years before they are exhausted. And long before exhaustion, the market will price in the trajectory, and the repricing will become violent and self-reinforcing. The price consolidating around $85 to $90 right now is not distribution, it is suppression. When physical demand exceeds physical supply by hundreds of millions of ounces per year, prices do not go sideways organically. The only reason price goes sideways in that environment is if a mechanism in the paper market is absorbing the upward pressure and preventing genuine price discovery. We know that mechanism exists, and we know it has been used. JP Morgan Chase paid $920 million in 2020 to settle charges from the Department of Justice related to spoofing and market manipulation in precious metals futures markets. Convicted traders. A guilty plea. The scheme involved placing massive fake orders in silver and gold futures to create false supply and demand signals, then canceling those orders before execution, systematically. For years, to manipulate prices. $920 million. A conviction. Court record. Not speculation. And yet the consensus Wall Street price target for silver end of 2026 is still $32 to $38, while Mexico burns. While the COMEX vaults are at 75% below their 2020 levels. While China has nationalized its silver refining exports, those targets are not analysis. They are cover. written by institutions that are net short silver futures and need retail money to stay on the sidelines long enough to manage their positions. The historical record on this is unambiguous. Every attempt to suppress a commodity price in the face of genuine physical scarcity has failed. The London gold pool failed. The Bretton Woods gold peg failed. The Soviet attempt to control commodity prices failed. Physical reality always asserts itself eventually. Always. When it does, the repricing is not gradual. It is violent. Gold went from 35 to 850 inches less than a decade after the gold window closed. Silver went from under $9 in 2008 to nearly $50 by 2011. The pattern is consistent. Suppression holds, then fails, then the price moves to cover not just the current gap but all the accumulated years of suppressed price signals. The $100 barrier is not a ceiling. Given the simultaneous supply shocks currently developing and the inelastic industrial demand growing against them, $100 is probably a waypoint on a move that reflects genuine physical scarcity for the first time in the modern silver market. What do you do with this information? Let me be direct. The difference between paper silver and physical silver is not academic right now. It is existential. If you own a silver ETF, you own a paper claim against the paper market. You own exposure to the COMEX spot price. You do not own silver. When the physical market breaks from the paper market, and I believe that break is developing right now, the ETF will not necessarily track the physical price. The ETF has counterparty risk. It has the risk that the entity managing it does not have the physical silver it claims to have. Given the documented rehypothecation practices in the LBMA system, that is not a theoretical concern. Physical silver. Bars and coins held in your possession or in a fully allocated, audited, non-bank vault. That is what Chinese industrial buyers are demanding at the COMEX. That is what Mexico cannot currently export. That is what China has decided is too strategic to sell to the West. Before the break, you are competing with a paper market that is lying to you about the price. After the break, you are competing with industrial buyers who need the metal to keep their factories running. The $85 to $90 range is the window. It will not stay open indefinitely. The Mexico situation will resolve one way or another, and the market will have full clarity on the supply impact. The COMEX delivery rumor will resolve, and the market will understand whether the exchange can still function. The China shadow ban will reveal its full impact when Western industrial buyers come to their Q2 and Q3 purchasing windows and find the refined silver they expected is not available. All three resolution moments are coming. When they arrive, this entry window closes. Reality always wins. That is the entire history of commodity markets and monetary systems compressed into 4 words. Every paper promise eventually gets tested against physical reality. And when the test comes, physical reality wins. It is coming. Prepare accordingly.